All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Golden Note podcast. My name is Jesse.
And I'm Karen Deep.
Today, we're going to be talking about Bob Dylan and his live performance
Yes.
in 1966 at the Royal Albert Hall. This is a album that you must listen to before you die on our 1,000 or the list of 1,001 albums that you should listen to before your end of the life.
Yes.
So interesting. This is our first live album that
Yeah.
we are talking about.
You're right.
So I didn't really know what to expect. I've listened to like live albums and stuff before. So yeah, I don't know. Let's get started. Album cover. I feel like here. Let's start with background first. This was a bootleg of the concert. So apparently, for like decades after this was just like some bootleg recording that could get at like record shops, or you could like download online, but it wasn't like an official release for a long time.
Wow.
So for those of us who don't know what bootlegging is, because we're Karen Deep and I are old, we're old fogies over here.
I know bootlegging in terms of alcohol, but I haven't quite.
You haven't heard it in terms of music?
Not so much.
I'm the only old person that.
Yes, Boomer Jesse over here.
Yeah, let me describe for you young folk what bootlegging concerts is. That's when someone would come to show up to a concert with some sort of audio recording device and sneakily record the entire concert on their audio recording device.
So basically my hobby.
Yes. And then they would return home with their recording and I guess just like do a DIY press of like this concert that they recorded and make physical copies and give it out. Be like, hey, check out this awesome live performance that I recorded. Yeah. And I guess maybe they would try and sell it sometimes. I don't. I'm not that old, so I don't know exactly how it worked. But essentially, it is a audio recording. It's an unofficial audio recording of a artist's concert.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so this was a prime example, very popular bootleg apparently, and it has only, I guess, in the 90s or early 2000s is when the Bob Dylan camp decided to like make it an official release, and apparently it made the list of 1,001 albums you need to listen to before you die. So that's the background. In terms of this album cover, I saw a different one on Apple Music. So I feel like it's just kind of like a meh, like it's whatever. Like we probably don't have to focus on. It's mostly just an audio record. It's his face on this one.
Yeah.
Bob Dylan's got a cool face, I guess, right?
Yeah, he looks like Bob Dylan.
Looks like Bob Dylan. Got the curly hair. Yeah, pretty solid. Not much to say. I feel like this is definitely an album that you would only listen to if you're a Bob Dylan fan, right? Like,
yeah, I'd agree.
You know what I mean? And okay, I feel like we can get started about the music. We don't really have to talk about the album.
Let's get into Bob Dylan's music.
Actually, I wish I'd looked up. I feel like this is in the UK, but it might be. Where is this?
Royal Albert Hall.
Royal Albert Hall. Can we look it up really quick, Karen Deep?
Yes.
And we'll see, because that's the only other interesting thing. Some other background on this album. This is right around the time that Bob over here was. Oh, London, England. There you go.
Yeah.
Got it.
And it looks like an old Royal Albert Hall. That's amazing.
The name matches the building.
Yeah.
This is around the time that good old Bob was switching from pure folk music to rock and roll. And
yes.
And it was a very controversial move apparently for his fan base, because a lot of people were like purists with their folk music, and they were like, you're selling out by like being rock and roll and like doing all this rock stuff. And Bob Dylan was like, hey man, times are changing.
Yes.
These are my amazing impersonations. Anyways, yeah, so this is like controversial period in his era, or in the 60s, where he was transitioning from folk to rock music. Lots of people had things to say about it. I didn't hear it in this when I was listening to it, but I did some research, and apparently there's moments where people in the audience were like making comments to him, being like, you sold out, when he started like playing like the more rock stuff on the second half of this album. And so it's just, and then he would like respond with like little snide comments here and there. I didn't really hear it, but maybe it's on like the more bootleg version of it, and this is like a more cleaned up version that I listen to on
Possibly, yeah.
Apple Music. But yeah, okay, that's all the background.
Great.
Let's talk about the music. Well, Karen, I've been yapping a lot, so please take it away from me here.
Yes, I have a lot of like overarching themes, topics with this one. I think maybe to break it down, we got two discs, two sides of this record. First side is his acoustic set, his folk set. Second is his rock set with the band.
Yep.
I love that it was split up this way. So if we're to focus on one section for the other, in the folk section, the first song, "She Belongs to Me." The only thing I have to say to this is Bob Dylan is doing his thing. I loved it.
There you go.
I like it. Just there's so much lyrical content in his songs that it was hard to even pinpoint a central theme for each of them. I mean, musician wise, like musically, it's all relatively the same. Folk, great chords, great harmony changes. But this song, starting it off, just felt like Bob Dylan's doing his thing. It's great.
It felt offbeat.
Ooh,
but there's no beat. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
like for some reason, I was like, what rhythm is this? Like, what's happening? I don't know. It started off weird for me, this album.
Yeah.
And I was just like, for some reason, he seems offbeat. It was cool. I loved how they like the applause was like very energetic at the beginning. It got me really hyped. But yeah, I don't know. You seem to really like the first track. I was just like, yeah, skip. Like, it's whatever.
I liked it because it felt like what I was expecting when I
Okay.
put on a Bob Dylan record.
Yeah.
However, I'm always slightly critical about his you know, and sometimes I just feel like it's just he's meandering a little bit too much. It feels like a cow moving at times, and it feels like in this record you can tell that he's getting warmed up in the first few songs. We're near the end of that first side. I feel like he's much more settled. The more rhythm is there,
Yeah.
and even those movings those movings are like even more in pitch and more rhythmically attuned. So I feel like he just started off meandering and he got more settled into the groove and more comfortable throughout that performance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's pretty fair. It's really funny because we recently had to review Janis Joplin, and now we're with Bob Dylan and this list of 1001 albums we have to listen to. And it's just like the two most controversial vocalists in terms of just their voice.
Yeah.
Right? Like you either love them or you hate them. We're just like having to listen to both of them like within a similar time frame. And it's just like, dang, like good thing that we don't hate both those singers so much. This would be torture.
Not yet.
Not yet, right? Okay, for the next song, Fourth Time Around. So just a heads up for you, Karen Deep. I had like a couple songs that I wrote some specific notes for.
Yep.
And then afterwards, I was just like, I'm just gonna do general,
That's fine.
general notes here for the rest of the album.
I
so-
did like the same thing, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look at that.
There you go. Yeah.
Not much.
There's some cool harmonica in Fourth Time Around. The vocal
Yes.
pacing kind of reminded me of Norwegian Wood by the Beatles, which is like one of my favorite Beatles songs. So that was cool. And I guess you could see like the influence kind of flowing back and forth between Bob Dylan and the Beatles, because there was like the Beatles had a ton of respect for Dylan and vice versa. And so harmonica, gotta love that harmonica.
Yeah, that was a great. When the harmonica came out, I felt like all of a sudden he can sing with a different voice. And I mean, he plays it really well. But the sustained notes, the kind of the big arpeggiated jumps, felt like the energy what the song needed, if not taking it to a new place each time when the harmonica was introduced. So in this record, I definitely agree that the harmonica is a huge plus to that. And I think this is the first time where I saw the appeal of your love for the harmonica.
Oh,
Like, I kind of understood it now before when previous records that we've listened to or if I've listened to, it never really stood out as strongly as Dylan doing his harmonica thing in this performance.
Okay, well, I'm glad you got a new appreciation for harmonica there. Yeah, no, the harmonica was great. For the rest of the tracks on the acoustic side, I just felt like Dylan was kind of very, like his performance was very hypnotic, I feel like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I could totally see being an audience member and just being like, wow, like this is so cool. And he yeah, he just kills it. Like every song sounds like he's very prepared. He knows all of his lyrics, shockingly.
There's a lot of lyrics.
And there's a lot of lyrics, and it's just like this is just so natural for him. And you got to give respect to the dude because it sounds pretty much exactly what it sounds like on the record. You know, there's a couple tracks on this side that we had listened to in the previous album that we listened to. Of course, I'm forgetting the name of it right now.
Something
But
about home, take me home, or
yes.
this is home, or
yeah,
something like that.
yeah. The last, our first Bob Dylan album that we reviewed, there's a couple tracks on this one too. So it's also cool to revisit those songs and be like, yeah, it's a great song. And hear it live and be like, this is almost exactly what it sounded like on the record,
Yeah.
right? So that's a really cool thing. If you can pull that off as an artist, then you're doing something right. So I really enjoyed the acoustic side of this album, and I just feel like my only critique of the songs themselves are just sometimes they're too long. But that's just a me thing, you know?
I got a couple of pointers on those notes. There's two tracks that stood out to me. One of them was Visions of Johanna. There's one lyric that I actually had to like replay a couple of times because I liked it that much. And it's inside the museums, infinity goes up on trial. Voices echo, this is what salvation must be like after a while. I thought that was amazing.
Wow.
We've mentioned this kind of concept of the the record museum or the music in the museum kind of thing. And listening to this track and hearing this lyric, it felt like the way he depicted what a museum is what this is in words. And I was like, I've never heard anybody talk about it that way before. So I love that. And there's so many moments like that, especially in that song, that is like poetry on blast. So I think it does a great job with that. And in contrast to a lot of the other albums we've listened to thus far, I felt like the lyricism really stood out to me in this live performance, even compared to the recording of his album before, where I felt like it was just more authentic and more grounded in the way he presented these songs now. So I had a great time actually enjoying the lyrics, listening to this side of the disc.
Yeah, Dylan is known sometimes for some good lyrics here and there.
Yeah, so I've heard.
Yeah, no, obviously a giant in terms of songwriting and poetry, and there's a lot that all of us can learn from his songwriting and his metaphors and just like what how he writes. So yeah, I can totally see that. They're like live performances have a way of like really highlighting the best parts of songs on that you sometimes don't get in the studio recording,
Yeah.
I'm good to move to the second half if you are.
I got one more point.
One more point, let's hear it.
The song Desolation Row. Okay, it's very long. Very, very long. But I loved it. It was where I like Bob Dylan the most. It touches on these really dark themes, and the storytelling of different characters and people, walks of life is so apparent in the song. And he just keeps on going. All of his observations of different people, different walks of life, that I feel like is what really characterizes Bob Dylan's connection to humanity and like why he's such a prevalent character. But it's the focus on the different types of people that and his way to present those observations that make him stand out. And I think this song does a fantastic job for that. It was just really long, but if I was invested, I would enjoy it through and through. I just felt like I wanted to switch it up after 3 minutes.
No, yeah.
I think it was a bit longer than 3 minutes.
Like 11 minutes or something, probably.
I think so, yeah.
I was going to say, you were like, this is a long song. And I was like, define that. Because sometimes he has 7-minute songs. Sometimes I think there's a track on here that's like 14 minutes or something, or like 12 minutes.
Right. There's got to be, yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, dang. So, all right.
Yeah, we can move on.
We'll move on to the rock version, or the second half of this album, which is the rock section. I had some thoughts. I love the passion and in Dylan's voice, and even there's like some angst that I was hearing when he was just like singing over those electric guitars. I was just like, I've never heard Dylan push his voice this hard before, and it was really cool. I really liked it. I thought, I thought that was a cool lens on Dylan's voice. You always just kind of hear him and stuff, right? But this one, he's like a rock singer, right? Like he's really pushing the limits on his voice. So I really enjoyed that. Also, there's a lot of Mick Jagger vibes I got from his singing.
Interesting. I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you?
I thought the energy when the
Vocally?
band came on this record, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, they got the band in for the second half.
Yeah.
My thoughts were kind of in the perspective of if I was there attending the concert, I would probably lose my mind. Because like I enjoy the first half, it's fantastic. And then they bring the band in for the second half, keep the energy up and just like hit it off. So I can't imagine that if that room was packed with Bob Dylan fans, that everyone would have been going nuts. But you mentioned that there has been some criticism about him selling out or what have you. So you have like those diehard fans for the folk stuff, but maybe there's a lot of people there that were like, maybe I was just introduced to Bob Dylan. A friend took me along to this concert, and now there's a band. That's amazing. It's what a spectacle, what a show that is. So I love that. It was very exciting. The energy was great, and you can kind of feel the energy in the room too. And so that was captured in the recording that I thought was very I listened to the live records before, but this one really felt like you can capture the energy in the room.
Yeah.
It's very special.
I also felt that. You really do notice the energy of the crowd in this recording, which is very cool.
Yeah.
On interesting note as well, apparently this tour, if I have my research correct, because I just kind of read it randomly as I was reading stuff, this tour was the last tour he went on until 1974.
Holy.
So he took a big break.
It's almost like 10 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So found that very, but he this was a massive tour. Like it was a world tour. So, it takes a toll on people for sure.
Yeah.
But clearly he was like, yeah, something special was in the air. And I mean, Bob Dylan is Bob Dylan, right? He's just like such a juggernaut in the music world. So he is the man, myth, and legend for a reason.
Yeah.
Right? The energy was great. What else here? Oh, you know what was really shocking for me though was the last song and his art, like his biggest song of all time, pretty much, Like a Rolling Stone, was trash.
It was.
You agree? Okay.
Yeah, it felt off. Like there's something.
It was too slow. It was too slow. I don't know if, I guess they didn't use like a click track back in 1966, right? So you just had to rely on the drummer, and for whatever reason, the drummer or the rest of the band or both just played this song noticeably slow. Like from within the first 15 seconds, I was like, this is not the same pace as the record. And then that forced Dylan to stretch out his notes, and he's already not the best singer in terms of vocal chops. And so when he's forced to elongate these notes, it just becomes it was painful.
Yeah.
It was.
And I can imagine putting on a show like that almost 2 hours, 2.5, even if there's a break or something like that.
Yeah.
You're tired.
Yeah.
And the last one, you probably phoned it in already because you're thinking it's the last song. I've felt this before on gigs where it's you're thinking it's the last song. You're thinking about okay, I got to get home, when's dinner? And it just messes you up. So you can't deliver as you've done the entire show. And sometimes it just flops on a bad note. So I feel like that was one of those moments where it's great.
Yeah.
And then he flopped. Or the whole band, everyone had a role to play.
Yeah.
In that, so yeah.
And it's just so sad because this was the track I was looking forward to the most.
Bummer.
Yeah. But there were great songs before it that I was like, oh, I've never heard this, but Dylan just sounds awesome as a rock singer. This is so cool. So that is those are my general thoughts on the album. I don't really have much else. It's a live album. If you're a Dylan fan, definitely I would recommend listening to it. Did you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah. Maybe a little statement or remarks about him as a folk singer and what I think he does well. He does Bob Dylan well. And there's something to be said about him being an individual and expressing himself the way he does. His storytelling, his lyricism, his ability to kind of get a band together and vibe with that type of energy as well. I think it's very clear that he's an artist, he's an individual who wants to share the music that comes through him. And when I hear Bob Dylan fans talk about Bob Dylan or trying to sing his songs, they try to mimic him in a way that doesn't account for the authenticity of what he's saying.
Yeah.
And sometimes it feels like if you were to cover a Bob Dylan song, borrow a chorus or two, but you got to write your own verses.
Mhm.
You got to connect it to your own life and the things that you've seen, because these are the things that he sings about, the things that he has seen, or at least he has connected to on a deeper level. And I think that's where his music kind of really comes to life.
Yeah.
And I think why he's so popular, why people love him, is that it feels like an invitation to explore these stories with him. And if you were to perform them or cover them, you should, or I would like for that performer to allow that same invitation to be shared with that singer as an individual, not as that singer as a person performing a Bob Dylan song, because it's not a Bob Dylan song, it's Bob Dylan performing. And I think there's a distinction there that I felt listening to this record.
Okay.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. His and it's kind of cool. We talked about this on another album where, like, if you're an artist and you're getting too hyper specific on your song, where you're talking about things that, like, only you and, like, maybe one or two other people would be like, oh yeah, like almost like an inside joke, you know what I mean? It's like, that could be cool, but also most people are gonna have obviously a hard time connecting to that. But Dylan does it in a way where it's hyper specific to him and, like, his experiences, but he makes them universal, right? And allows for the audience to, like, connect with what he's singing about. So yeah, makes him special for that reason, right? Yeah. Overall, I guess I'll give my score.
Yeah, sure.
For the album.
So what we do is we will each have a rating out of 5, and we'll put our scores together to give it a combined rating out of 10. If this score is higher, from 9 or above, we'll do something special. Maybe we'll make a cover about one of the songs in the album. But this is our way of giving our piece and giving our critique in a score. So Jesse, please give us your score out of 5.
My score out of 5 is a respectable 3.5 out of 5.
Wow.
Yeah. I feel like if they had knocked Like a Rolling Stone out of the park, I would give this a higher rating. They didn't. So I'm offended. I'm sad. But, and you know what? If I were a Bob Dylan fan, like a certified Bob Dylan fan, I probably would give this higher too. But both of those things are not true about me. So, and about the album. So, yeah, 3.5. That's
Very
my
good.
score.
Very respectable. Seems like there's a commonality here. I'm also giving this a 3.5.
We're on the same page.
Yeah. Look at that.
Okay, there you go.
All the same
7
reasons.
out of 10.
There's a couple of flops. It's a live album, so I can't really be too concerned about, like, recording or mixing, because it is what it is.
Some person just recorded it.
Yeah, that's
like,
impressive.
in the crowd.
For what it's worth, the technology at the time, you probably have to carry, like, a briefcase or something, cassette players and everything.
Yeah.
So whoever made this, I'm very happy that you made this record exist. If you're still alive, thank you. If you're not, thank you. And things like this documentation of live performances is very special, and it's one of the main reasons why I have an interest in recording myself. It's about capturing the untangible, and I think this record is a example of that, of the untangible. But I'm not a huge Bob Dylan fan, and I wish he didn't moo so much. So 3.5, yeah.
That's so funny. Wait, my one bonus comment here. As a performer myself and someone who is usually using the microphone to connect with the audience, I was really intrigued by the fact that he didn't, he rarely spoke to the audience. You know what I mean? Like, there was no, like, hey, everybody, how's it going? You guys doing all right out there? Like, he just showed up at the very start, played the song, played this next song. It felt like you could go 3-4 songs without him saying a single thing to the audience, and that was fine.
Yeah,
it worked, you know?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Did you have any thoughts about that?
I feel like he's a man who lets his music speak for him.
Yeah.
And he does a great job with that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, there's no one way to do things. And this is just a prime example, you know? Like, because most of the time, as a lead singer, you need to be connecting with the audience and speaking to them, like, usually between songs. That's what a lot of singers do. But Dylan was like, I don't do that. We're here for music. That's it.
Exactly. Well, so please, if you liked to hear our thoughts and our criticisms about this record, please leave a like, and we'd love to hear your thoughts below in the comments. Thank you again for watching and listening. Jesse, please take it away.
Thank you for listening do all those things that Karen just said, and we'll see you later.